Welcome to the first transfer tips video of the season. If you want, you can check out my team selection, which is out on the channel, and explain the transfer I've made and also my thinking in terms of the benching headaches. And we're going to be covering more of this in the deadline stream on Saturday, so be sure to tune in for that. But in this video, we're going to be covering the main transfer topics, and we're going to talk about the players to buy, hold, sell, and skip, as well as the big transfer that everyone seems to be making this week or that they've already made. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes, and we're very close to 12,000 subscribers, and it'd be very much appreciated if we can get to that milestone. But without further ado, let's get straight into this one. Everyone seems to have transferred out Harry Kane for Erling Haaland, and it's no surprise that Kane was the first player in the game this season to go down in price from 11.5 million to 11.4 million, and that has made it more difficult to get Erling Haaland, who's also gone up in price. So there's a 0.2 million difference between them now, and I was one of them that made the transfer very early before the price changes, so I kind of got away with that one there. Now, Kane's ownership is 20.2%, and he's the most transferred player out this week with over 650,000 at the time of this recording, and he only scored 2 points, and he had a few chances, but he wasn't that impressive in Game Week 1, and the fixture against Southampton was much more appealing at home compared to West Ham away. But Erling Haaland was involved in both goals. He won the penalty, took it away very nicely, and also scored a fabulous goal, a great combination with Kevin De Bruyne. But speaking about Haaland specifically, he's obviously the most transferred player in this week with over 840,000. He scored 13 points, so he's the joint third highest point scorer in the game, the joint highest forward along with Mitrovic. And in terms of the fixtures beyond Game Weeks 2 to 4, for Harry Kane, you've got West Ham away, Fulham at home, and Man City away. So not too bad, but West Ham and Man City is a bit iffy. But you compare that to Man City, who have Nottingham Forest at home, Aston Villa away, and Tottenham at home. And they would have back-to-back home fixtures in Game Weeks 4 to 5, Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest. And I think Erling Haaland is the better option at the moment. But I don't blame people who started Harry Kane in Game Week 1, because I also thought that he would vastly outscore Haaland in Game Week 1, but it wasn't meant to be. And maybe it was an element of overthinking, but you also have to back your gut on these situations. And if you are also in a position where you have a bit of squad depth and you can booking and transfer for Game Week 2 potentially, then it is worth the risk. But ultimately, the Haaland owners have triumphed in this occasion, but I still would expect both of them to be fighting for the Golden Boot, being the two highest scoring forwards in the game by some distance, and also competing for player of the season as well, potentially. If not, Haaland could be competing for the young player of the season. But both of them are great options. I wouldn't move Harry Kane on to any other player. In the weeks to come, I'd probably shift Harry Kane out of the side for Erling Haaland. And you look at the stats there on screen. I mean, they're absolutely ridiculous for Erling Haaland. He also had 10 touches inside the opposition's box, and by far the most big chances of any forward. He also had 5 shots inside the box, and his XG was 1.83, which is higher than Salah's expected goal involvement. And not only that, almost double the Egyptians' expected goal involvement. So absolutely ridiculous stuff from Erling Haaland, and I expect him to keep on going. Well, Haaland is technically the first buy of this video. We are now going into the buy section, and Aleksandar Sinchenko, another one who has gone up in price from 5 million to 5.1, and he is actually the joint second highest scoring defender behind Fabian Schär with 12 points with that assist and maximum bonus points against Crystal Palace. And his ownership is 23.3%, and he is the second most transferred in player this week with over 480,000 at the time of this recording. And I think he's a good option. I still think Ramsdale might be the better defensive coverage for Arsenal, but if those of you, you already have that set and forget goalkeeper, I wouldn't want to make a goalkeeper transfer, especially so early on in the season, and you don't have triple Arsenal yet, whether it's in the attack or the defensive coverage, then I think Sinchenko is your guy, and I think he's a great option to replace Matty Cash, who's also making way in a lot of these FPL teams, and it's very easy to get to him, even from Ivan Perisic, who we'll be discussing later on in this video. I think Sinchenko's a great replacement. You look at the stats, they're pretty decent considering only one game. His expected assist is already almost 0.5, 1 big chance created, 2 key passes, and the assist for Martinelli was very impressive. It was a nicely worked set piece from Arsenal. Poor defending from Crystal Palace, but Sinchenko was very impressive. He also had a shot in the game, which was parried out by Gaeta. So Sinchenko for me is one of the best 5 million defenders at the moment. He's got great fixtures, and once Arsenal's fixtures take a turn for the worse, you can wildcard him out around Game Week 9, so there's no issue there. I think Sinchenko's a good medium to long-term purchase. I talked about Mitrovic extensively in my best budget forwards video just before the Game Week 1 deadline, and I think he is the best budget forward at the moment, to be quite frank. I am very surprised by his brace against Liverpool, but I also said in that video I wouldn't be too surprised if he were to score a goal in that game, but I wouldn't start the season with him because Liverpool at home is just far too difficult of a fixture for Fulham. But there you go, I was proven wrong, and that's why football isn't always played on paper, and you have to back your gut. A lot of you that went with Mitrovic ended up benching him, and you might be regretting that, but ultimately it does make sense. You know, you had a kind of prediction, you stuck with it, and it's not the worst decision in the world. Now, I wouldn't be in a rush to get Mitrovic. The fixtures are quite mixed, especially from game weeks 2 to 6, as you can see on screen, but I think he's a very good player to have later on in the season to target those fixture swings. And also, it depends on the strikers you have. We're going to be talking about a few strikers in this video later on, and you can get Mitrovic in for them. But you've got Darwin Núñez, you've got Jesus, Ivan Toney, Callum Wilson, and you've got obviously the premium forwards. Other than those options, there's probably a bit of a possibility to get Mitrovic because the rest of the forwards aren't that appealing. But would I take a -4 to go from Undav or another budget forward up to Mitrovic and then downgrading a midfielder? Probably not. Obviously, it's all circumstantial. And depending on the midfielder you get rid of, or maybe another position, it might make sense and it does actually benefit your team in the long run. But I wouldn't be taking hits just yet. But talking about Mitrovic specifically, he went up from 6.5 to 6.6 million. His ownership is just shy of 14%. And he is the third most transferred in player this week with 443,000 at the time of this recording. He is the joint third highest scoring player, along with Erling Haaland and a few others. And he is the joint highest scoring forward, along with Erling Haaland, of course. And in the last 45 league matches, which includes the championship last season, he has scored 45 goals in his last 45 games. That is absolutely ridiculous. I think he's going to have a good season and definitely score over 10 goals. And I can see him even maybe going a step further and doing something absolutely ridiculous. You look at the stats there, his XG is just shy of 1. He had 1 big chance, 1 key pass, 3 shots, good shot volume, 2 goals, of course, against Liverpool. He was a right handful, even for Virgil van Dijk. So I think Mitrovic is the best budget forward. But despite the fact that he's a buy, it depends on the striker you're getting rid of. And we're going to be talking about that later on in this video. Arsenal players are very popular at the moment, and Martinelli has gone from 6 to 6.1 million. His ownership is 25.5%, and he's the 5th most transferred in player with just under 300,000 transfers in. He scored 8 points, a goal, no bonus points, but he also got the clean sheet point against Crystal Palace. And Martinelli, for me, is the best around his price point, 6 million, now 6.1 million. And for those of you that have Rashford or maybe another 6 million midfielder, maybe even 7 million that you're not too sure about, I think Martinelli is a very easy transfer in. He scored a goal, of course. He had 2 shots, 2 big chances. He really should have scored the other one, which I think was also created by Gabriel Jesus. He had 1 key pass and his XG was 0.77. Very impressive stuff for only 1 game week from a 6 million midfielder, or at least he was when he had that game. 0.12 expected assists. I think Martinelli could have a bit of a breakout season. Yes, we already kind of know about him. He scored 10 goals in his first 12 starts for Arsenal under Unai Emery. But in the Premier League specifically, I don't think he's ever been that spectacular yet. But I think this could be the season where he can get double digits in terms of goals and or assists. I think he could really come alive, just like Saka did in the last campaign. So for me, Martinelli is a buy. The first hold discussed in this video is Mason Mount, and he had a very good pre-season. He is still 8 million in price, and he is not amongst the most transferred out players this week. His ownership is only 9.3%. And Mount to Kolazewski is a very popular transfer this week, but I just don't agree with it. I don't think it's worth it. They are facing each other, a great London derby to watch already so early in the season. Mount was very underwhelming against Everton, but I wouldn't chase last week's points to such an extent. And with Chelsea assets, Mount is still in my top 3, probably in my top 2, along with Reece James. You've also got Ben Chilwell in the equation, but I just don't think it's worth selling him. If you went for an 8 million midfielder, such as Mason Mount, I would probably just hold for the time being. I don't think it makes any sense to kind of jump from 8 million midfielders so early on in the season. If you already had a bit of a plan to go for Diaz or Mason Mount or Saka and then move them on to Jarrod Bowen in Game Week 2, then fair enough. But I still wouldn't do that personally, although you can obviously play the game the way you want and you can still do very well and even better than I will. But the only 8 million midfielders I would possibly move Mason Mount to, and I still wouldn't do it just yet, are Bukayo Saka and Luis Diaz. But then you've got James Maddison, who I really like, but he's got some very mixed fixtures in the next couple of game weeks. And a big part of starting with James Maddison, which I heavily considered, was that Game Week 1 fixture on top of the Game Week 3 fixture against Southampton at home. But if you went for Mason Mount, just stick with him. Would I bring Mason Mount in at this point in the season? No, I wouldn't. I just wait and see how Chelsea do in the next couple of weeks. And maybe you could get him in ahead of that Leeds fixture in Game Week 3. But even then, I'd probably be a bit patient when it comes to these medium-priced midfielders and look to make transfers elsewhere. There's a bit of a recurring theme here. Of course, you'd keep Kolazewski. He just scored 13 points. He's one of the highest scoring players in the game at the moment. But would I actually buy Kolazewski? He's actually one of the most transferred in players this week, the fourth most, with over 300,000 FPL managers transferring him in. I don't agree with that. He is facing Chelsea away. I think it could be quite a closed affair. Obviously, you never know, and Chelsea haven't looked that great in pre-season. Tottenham might even be the favourites in a way, despite their awful record against the Blues in recent years. And Kulusevski's ownership also makes him very encouraging. But one thing we need to consider is Richarlison is now available after a suspension in Game Week 1. And with Richarlison, I think he's going to take some minutes away from both Heung-min Son and Kulusevski, making arguably Harry Kane the most viable and attractive FPL forward from Spurs, although I still think it's Heung-min Son. And Kulusevski, don't get me wrong, he has been an amazing signing for Spurs since joining in January, and he probably was the difference maker in the tail end of the last campaign. But would I buy Kolazewski in Game Week 2 when he's facing Chelsea? No, I wouldn't. But if I had Kolazewski, I would hold him. I think it's very simple and I wouldn't overcomplicate the situation. He's a great option in the weeks to come, and maybe I should have discussed him more so in pre-season. Once again, this may seem like a very obvious hold, but Gabriel Jesus is the second most transferred out player this week with over 267,000 FPL managers taking the Brazilian out of their teams. And to be honest, a really big reason why is because of his ridiculous ownership, which I think touched 76% or even higher when Game Week 1 began. Now it's only 71.7%, and I say only very loosely. He only scored 2 points, and his stats, as you can see on screen, were very underwhelming, but he actually had a very good performance. He was causing problems for the likes of Mark Gay and the other Crystal Palace defenders. He was pressing very well. He also created a very good chance, I think, for Martin Odegaard and also for Gabriel Martinelli. And he didn't really do too well with the chances he had. And to be honest, they were fairly limited anyway in terms of quantity and also quality. But for me, Gabriel Jesus is a hold. Yes, you've got Callum Wilson and Ivan Toney that you can move him to if you need to at some stage in the season. But I still think amongst this price, Gabriel Jesus is among the very best options at your disposal. So I wouldn't be selling him so early on in the season. We are now on to the sell section, and Ivan Perisic has been a constant headache before FPL even began this season. And I actually had him in a very late draft before the Game Week 1 deadline. But after I saw some predicted lineups from kind of in the nose from Tottenham Hotspur, and Ivan Perisic wasn't in their predicted starting lineup, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to take the risk, despite obviously the very high risk and reward factor of Ivan Perisic. And it was Session who started and scored against Southampton. His ownership is 21.2%. He is still 5.5 million, but it's not going to be too long, I think, before his price goes down. And he's the third most transferred out player this week with over 250,000 FPL managers taking Perisic out of their teams, and only 1 point with a 24-minute cameo. Now, some defenders you can move Ivan Perisic to include Sinchenko, Trippier, Reece James, Chilwell, or a City defender like Diaz and Laporte once he's back. But in terms of those that you can really get to and you don't need to make another transfer in order to generate those funds in most cases, I think Sinchenko, Trippier would do just fine, and they could be great options. Even a 4-point family and defender such as Fabian Schär could be the way to go, and that also enables you to upgrade another position in your team. And Ivan Perisic, we can't really judge the stats too much that you can see on screen, but I have talked about him in the best defenders video. If you want, check that out. And his stats from Serie A last season were absolutely ridiculous, with 8 goals and 7 assists, I believe. And he is such a versatile player. He's going to make a big impact on Tottenham's team and their aspirations this season. But now I think is the time to sell, and I wouldn't go near him until he's nailed. When Rashford's price was first announced, I was actually very encouraged by it, and I was considering having him in my Game Week 1 team. But seeing United more in pre-season and also all the issues, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch, that really put me off Marcus Rashford. And he didn't really have a great pre-season. Yes, he scored some goals, but it wasn't nothing spectacular. I think Martial was the go-to Man United forward until his injury. Rashford is still priced at 6.5 million and his ownership is 10.8%. I think a move to Martinelli is very simple. You've also got a few other options around this price, like Aronson from Leeds, who had a very encouraging performance against Wolves and almost got the touch to that goal to secure some FPL points there. Rashford only scored 2 FPL points, and he had some chances. He had a really big chance created by Ronaldo, and he also missed some sitters, and maybe some half chances, you could say. But I think a fully confident Marcus Rashford would take full advantage of them. But he's just short of confidence. It's not the same Rashford from a few seasons ago. And of course, he has the potential to do very well. But at the moment, it's just not clicking for him. And United are a very dysfunctional team. And I wouldn't go for any of their assets right now, to be quite frank, in any position. I'm trying to maybe make a case for Lisandro Martinez at 4.5 million, but I just can't bring myself to do it. So I would sell Marcus Rashford. If you don't have Martinelli, it's a very easy move. Other than that, yes, you could be a bit patient, and it's not the worst decision in the world to hold him because he can do well against Brentford and even the other games coming up, but I would probably sell him if I had him in my FPL team. The final sell in this video is Kai Havertz. I don't think he's been discussed enough. And I just don't really like him as an FPL option in the years gone by. Yes, he did improve in the last campaign, but there's still nothing that really stands out. Mason Mount is the go-to Chelsea attacker for me, alongside Raheem Sterling now, potentially. But Kai Havertz isn't it for me. Yes, he's playing as the striker for Chelsea, but in 74 minutes, he did absolutely nothing. His ownership is 4.1%. He is 8 million in price. And his XG and expected assists isn't the worst of the players we've covered in this list. He's had 3 shots, 1 on target. But I think a move to Jesus, Callum Wilson, Ivan Toney, Mitrovic, or maybe someone else that we haven't discussed is definitely on the cards. But I think those forwards are just very easy to move on to. None of those players have gone up in price, and it's not like you need to generate funds by downgrading someone else in another position in order to make the move from Kai Havertz to one of those forwards. It's very easy, and I would probably just do it right now, actually. Yes, with Mason Mount, I said he's worth holding, but I have more confidence in his ability to score goals and get assists on a consistent basis compared to Kai Havertz, who is very on and off. And a lot of Chelsea fans are losing patience with the German as well. Let me know if you disagree with this one. This might not be everyone's favourite kind of decision here in this video, but I think Kai Havertz is worth selling. Yes, he's not owned by much of the game, but I would probably just move him on and look on to greener pastures. A 7 million midfielder from Man City who can get goals and assists, as he has proven at Aston Villa, is definitely something that we can't fully ignore. But I think Grealish is a skip for now. He is still 7 million. His ownership is 4.3%, which is identical to Kai Havertz. He only scored 3 points with that clean sheet against West Ham. I would avoid 7 million midfielders right now. Harvey Barnes, when he's fully fit and recovers from his injury, is probably my favourite 7 million midfielder at the moment. But I would just wait and see with all these options. You've got Zaha as well, who's obviously very lively. He had a great campaign that just went by. But I wouldn't go for him right now with the fixtures that Crystal Palace have. And with Jack Grealish, nothing spectacular. What I do like is his creativity, and he can get the odd assist here and there. But I'd rather go for Kevin De Bruyne from Man City. You've got Erling Haaland, Cancelo, another City defender like Diaz, Ederson. And I just wouldn't spend a City spot on Jack Grealish at the moment. He is a good option, I think, potentially in the months to come, but not right now. And I would skip him and watch from afar. What has happened to Bruno Fernandes? He was a great FPL option when he first joined, and in his first full season, he scored over 240 FPL points, and we were discussing him as a rival to Mohamed Salah. And like I said earlier in this video with Marcus Rashford, I wouldn't go anywhere near these United assets, especially when they cost 10 million or above, like Bruno Fernandes, and the same goes for Cristiano Ronaldo. Bruno Fernandes' ownership is 3.1%, and he only got 2 points against Brighton. He had some chances, as you can see there. He did create a big chance, but I would actually class the chance he had as a big chance. He absolutely scuffed it over the bar, and just nothing impressive, really. I think the creativity can still be there, and he can get 15 goal contributions or above, and once things click, Bruno Fernandes can just get those FPL points, but right now it's not happening, and I would skip him entirely. Botman only played 1 minute against Nottingham Forest, the Newcastle's opener, and things are looking very good there in Tyneside. They could even aim for a 6th place finish, maybe 7th. They're looking very impressive. And Sven Botman was actually a defender that I kept on talking about as my favourite 4.5 million option. But with Dan Burn's performance, with Fabian Schär scoring 15 FPL points and just a great overall display, scoring that great goal, it's very hard for Botman to get into the side at the moment, and it might take some time. And we have seen with Eddie Howe in January, for example, with Bruno Guimaraes, he was slowly integrated into the starting 11, and it didn't happen from the get-go. And this is something I saw before the Gameweek 1 deadline as well, and something that I wanted to convey to you in the deadline stream before it was unfortunately cut short. And I think Sven Botman will be a good FPL option in the future. And all the stats that you can see on screen are from last season, except for his ownership, which is slightly out of date now. It is 2.2% at the time of this recording, and he can be a great differential in the months to come. But don't go for him just yet. Obviously, he was great for Lille. He will be good for the Dutch national team, and he can do great things at Newcastle. But just go for Fabian Schär at the moment if you need a 4.5 million defender, or maybe look to an Arsenal defender, as we keep on doing, like William Saliba. So that's it. We've discussed the big talking points in terms of transfers, Harry Kane to Erling Haaland, and all these buys, holds, sells, and skips. Botman is kind of on the watch list. The same could be said for Grealish and Bruno Fernandes once their form and FPL points start kicking about and going to the next level. And that's what I want to do, I think, with the skip section as well in the future. It's kind of a mixture of skipping for now, but also keeping an eye on, because they can be great options once circumstances align. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes, and we're very close to 12,000 subscribers, the next milestone we have. So it'd be very much appreciated if you can help me reach that goal, and we're also going to help you in the FPL community to do the best you possibly can. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also join the Discord server, and you can also see the Patreon and channel memberships. All of that is in the description below, and be sure to join the FPL League. It'd be great to have you on there, and I look forward to seeing you for the deadline stream on Saturday and possibly a reaction stream on Sunday. And there's going to be far more FPL content to come, as well as UCL Fantasy and F1 Fantasy. So I hope you stick around, and I'll see you next time.